Yeah, my name's Huw Kinch. I'm the winemaker here at Pyramid Valley. I've been here since 2018. Not long after the change in ownership from Mike and Claudia Weersing to selling the company to Brian Sheth and Steve Smith. So yeah, and with the new company, I guess they've been big on wanting to refocus Pyramid back into a Chardonnay Pinot Noir story with a little bit of Sauvignon Blanc. And yeah, I guess Mike, with planting the home block here in Waikari, was just about Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, and then the brand kind of went with lots of other varietals, and so we wanted to bring that back to the Chardonnay Pinot Noir story with a fine wine kind of mentality behind showing our unique sites in the bottle. So today we've got I think 4 wines from our Pastures collection and a brand new botanical wine from our Central Otago property in Lowburn that was purchased in 2018 as a sister property to our Waikari site where I'm based and where the winery is based. So the first wine is kind of all Pastures collection is just Chardonnay Pinot Noir, except for this first wine you're going to try, which is a Weaver Sauvignon Blanc, which is a single vineyard Sauvignon. And yeah, I guess we as a company want to explore what, we've got a great site in Marlborough that we buy fruit from the Weaver family who own Churton. And yeah, we want to explore what does New Zealand Sauvignon taste like with a very fine wine mentality, from a great biodynamic hillside vineyard that's farmed biodynamically and with a lot of care, and then it's hand picked into 12-kilo crates and brought down to Pyramid, and then whole bunch pressed and wild ferment with the indigenous yeast from the fruit and in this property that's never had any commercial yeast on it, and had about 14 months in the winery before being bottled, unfined and unfiltered. So I guess wanting to explore that, what can New Zealand do in that fine wine space of Sauvignon? There's already some producers exploring this, and we wanted to join that conversation really. So the site is on the hillside between the Waihope Valley and the Omaka Valley, planted early 2000s by Sam Weaver. And the block we got the 21 from is the topside block, hillside kind of facing northwest. And yeah, I guess produces a Sauvignon that's quite, riper expression more than the kind of grassy herbal kind of that you can get from the valley floor. So it was hand picked, whole bunch pressed and then fermented in wooden egg and left on lees for 12 months unsulfured, and then was racked and blended kind of the following harvest, and then bottled in June that year. So just taking that fine, patient kind of approach to winemaking, and seeing what Sauvignon tastes like with it. Any kind of have a taste and let me know what you think. It's a very kind of small parcel. We're also doing a Sauvignon from North Canterbury, which is about $30 to 35 New Zealand retail, where this is about 85 New Zealand retail. So I'm not sure what the UK prices are, but we think it's a great site, and I guess in New Zealand we usually put a lot of care and intention into growing and making Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, but tend to not give Sauvignon the same kind of respect.
This may be a silly question. Is Weaver the name of the vineyard? This is a single
No,
vineyard.
it's the name of the family. So Churton's the vineyard, I guess, which is you might be familiar with that brand in the UK. Sam Weaver, Sam and Mandy Weaver. So that's their surname. So that's what we call the vineyard, I guess, because we didn't want to use their brand name as a vineyard name. But yeah, single vineyard site. So in this Pastures collection, we have been doing, you might have been familiar with the Appellation series of North Canterbury Chardonnay, North Canterbury Pinot Noir, and Central Pinot. Within this Pastures collection, we're exploring single vineyards as well, so that we've got 4 single vineyards here to taste. So we still do the kind of the sub-regional or regional wines, but when we find a vineyard that we find quite interesting and we want to bottle separately, it allows us to bottle it as a single vineyard under that range. The Weave has been 21 was the first wine we've done under this label. We've bottled a 22 and 23 is in barrel at the moment, which will be planned to be bottled in August this year. Some of the other wines are just dependent on the vintage. Yeah, far away. What do you think of it?
It's delicious. We're talking about the texture is really lovely. Presumably a lot of that's come from not only the pedigree of the terroir, but also very intrigued by the wooden egg. I was just wondering if you...
Yeah. So we've got there's, I think, the second fill of that egg. So yeah, I think that's helped with the texture. And then also just, I think, sitting on lees for pretty much 12 months without sulfur, I think helps build texture in wines a lot. I'm kind of a big believer in that. About basically building weight and texture with that slow élevage and leaving sulfur out of that élevage, but then timing of sulfur to capture the freshness and the expression of sight in the bottle as well. So I don't have I use sulfur in my winemaking, but it's very much about time and place, and I think it's a very useful tool that maybe with commercial winemaking it's been overused, and then you kind of lose the texture from that when you kind of sulfur fruit straight away and at ferment or straight after ferment. So we try to, with all our wines, leave them as long as we can without sulfur, but at the same time not lose freshness and sense of place, I guess. Like I have I guess a motto in my winemaking of wanting to try and show clarity of place, and I guess wine is an expression of the place, the season, and the people. So those 3 things you can't take away from the wine, but it's about those 3 elements being in balance.
Okay, thank you.
And you had a question about the soil, didn't you?
Yes, I was. What's the soil type of the vineyard? Is that
clay? The kind of clay soils, that hillsides of Marlborough. A lot of it's mainly clay. So it's got pretty good water holding capabilities, but yeah, it's organically farmed and has a fair bit of competition. So the yields are moderate as well. So I think that adds to that texture and weight in the wine. They're looking at kind of 7 tonne a hectare versus a lot of commercial Sauvignons probably closer to 15, if not higher. So I think that helps. And yeah, it's a site that I think Sam chose because of that exposure and that water holding capacity of those soils, and to have kind of moderate crops to have really intense flavors in the fruit. So yeah, his son's kind of taken over now. Ben Weaver is kind of managing it or he's kind of taken over running the property and making the wines under that Churton brand as well. So he's about my age, so he's got a good fun guy to get on with, and yeah, he I guess the idea with these wines is having people that have a similar philosophy in growing in wine, and then we can work together really well. So, any other questions with that, Sauvignon?
Well, I think we can move on to the Chardonnay now.
Okay, perfect. Cool. So the 2020 spring Chardonnay is from the old Waipara Springs site in Waipara. It's the oldest Chardonnay vineyard in Waipara, planted in 1983, and it's one of the oldest Chardonnay vineyards in the country. So it's Mendoza on own roots, and it's a block that I got offered a little bit of fruit from in 2019, and then we got offered the lease on the block that winter. So we've been farming the vineyard since the winter of 2019, and it's a basis for our North Canterbury Chardonnay from this vineyard, but then we also select the best old vines to make this single vineyard spring Chardonnay. So yeah, very unirrigated vineyard on these Omahi clay soils, over like calcareous clay soils. Really quite wide spacing, 3 metre rows. So very much traditional, like old New Zealand, 1,850 vines a hectare. So polar opposite to Waikari. So for the team working here at the kind of 1 metre rows and then going in there at 3 metre rows, it feels quite, it's a very different kind of vineyard, but yeah, beautiful old vines, yep, and hand-picked, would have been foot crushed and then pressed, and then full solids to barrel, and yeah, left on lees for 12 months, then racked and sulfured back to old puncheon for another 6 months, kind of bottled that September, unfined, unfiltered. So North Canterbury has I guess quite a unique position in New Zealand. It's right on the coast, basically, like Waikari, where we are, only 25 kilometres from the coast. And so Waipara is even closer, maybe 10 kilometres from the coast. But then we're at the foothills of the Southern Alps. So there's always a cooling effect either from the ocean or the Southern Alps. So we retain acidity really well in our fruit. And there's, I think there's always a saline drive to the wines from North Canterbury. And with Chardonnay, I think it's, we can get them fully ripe, flavour ripe, and often we're waiting for acidity to get low enough to pick. And so that goes through full malo and still has a beautiful line of acidity, but richness in fruit, which I think is, a hallmark of North Canterbury Chardonnay. And I think it's probably, it's pretty hard to come by often. A lot of regions that I've worked in with Chardonnay, either, you can choose to go with the higher acid line, but then you don't get the richness and ripeness, or and breadth in the wine, or you go for the breadth, but then you don't have the acidity and drive. So I think the natural, climatic conditions and terroir of North Canterbury really suits Chardonnay.
Did you say it was planted in 83, Huw?
Yeah, 83. So the oldest Chardonnay block in Waipara, and one of the oldest in the country. So yeah, it was unirrigated, so it's not a big cropping vineyard, but it makes amazing wine, so that's why we continue to lease it. Probably doesn't make much sense.
Like real peachy.
Yeah, peachy, nectarine.
Yeah. But with that, again, fresh limey acidity. Yeah, it's really delicious.
Yeah, because often we'll be picking, I think that's probably close to 14% alcohol, but that would have been 10 grams of acid when we picked it, and we're kind of waiting for the acid to be low enough so it's balanced. And that's it. We're in the middle of harvest here at the moment, and we've picked Waipara Chardonnay about a couple of weeks ago, maybe a week or two ago, but we're waiting on the Waikari Chardonnays, which will start next week, which is basically waiting for acidity to get low enough.
And your puncheons, how old are they?
500 litre puncheons is most of the time we ferment in. Yeah.
And used puncheons, second fill?
So the Wypra, the spring Chardonnay and the North Canterbury Chardonnay is about kind of 25% new to 30% new. That Wypra spring site soaks up the oak quite well, and it also allows us to bring fresh oak into the program with our Lion's Tooth and Field of Fire Chardonnays. We don't use any new oak, but we like to use 1 to 4 year old barrels. So the North Canterbury allows us to bring in some new oak and season it in that wine, and then put it to Lion's Tooth and Field of Fire.
So is it a punch? I thought you said it goes into puncheon after initial fermentation.
Yeah.
So it goes a new barrel.
Well, no, so the new ones are just during ferment for 12 months in those barrels, and then we wanted to age it for a second winter, and it was a smaller volume, so we put it to the old puncheon for the second winter, and then use those newer barrels for the next vintage. Does that make sense?
Yeah. The oak isn't overwhelming.
No.
Yeah, I think it's a site that does soak up the oak pretty well, and I guess we don't want to make wines that are really oak driven, but I guess I have a philosophy in winemaking. Every decision is an influence on flavour, like whether it's stainless steel or oak or clay, they all influence flavour one way or another, and so it's our decision, our choice, and it's our decision to try and understand what we do and how that's going to influence, and hopefully choose a decision that at the end of the day makes a delicious glass of wine.
So you said lees, it's on its lees for 6 months, and then
12 months.
12 months. Do you do stirring, or is it just kind of
Not typically. No, we'll stir the first winter if we find really reductive barrels. I find it's a good way to rein in reduction. We're stirring that first winter, but if there's not any serious reduction issues, we'll leave them alone. We like to leave them on those lees without sulfur, and not sulfur till we rack 12 months afterwards. And basically what we do is when we're ready to pick Chardonnay, we rack the year before and sulfur it in tank, and if it's a small volume we might go back to old puncheon. If it's a larger volume we hold it in stainless or concrete. So it's a bit of a movable feast, but I think for me it's trying to leave them as long as possible without sulfur, and be able to basically empty out those barrels, wash them, and then fill them with juice. Is what we try to do.
Cool, thank you.
Cool. Any other questions on the Chardonnay?
No.
No, that's delicious. Thank you.
It is really lovely, thank you.
Yeah, we think there's a massive potential for North Canterbury Chardonnay, really, and we've top crafted a little bit of Chardonnay at a friend's vineyard in Wypra this year to try and increase our kind of source of North Canterbury Chardonnay. It's just not much planted, but I think out of all the varieties, it could be I think it might be the strongest variety for the region in the long term, but we just don't have that much in the ground, unfortunately. So then on to the next wines, the Korimako Pinot Noir. So this is a new single vineyard wine from a site that's been supplying fruit for our North Canterbury Pinot Noir. I'm not sure if you're ever familiar with a brand called Bellbird Springs. That was a brand in Wypra, and this is one of the vineyards that Guy Porter owned, and it's an east-facing site, which is quite rare in Wypra. A lot of the sites are more west to northwest facing, which like Greystone, Black Estate, all along that Omahi hillside with they're all kind of facing west to northwest, so much more kind of exposed to the nor'wester in the afternoon sun, where this site's east facing, which we quite like, being a bit more protected from the hotter afternoon sun, and it's on this dominant clay soils, and yeah, we really like the site, and we've been sourcing it, using it for our North Canterbury, and then there was a certain part of that vineyard that we really liked in 2020, so we decided to bottle it under its own label called Korimako, which is one of the words used to describe a bellbird in Maori. So it's there's multiple different ways to say bellbird in Maori, and Korimako is one of them. So that's kind of a nod to the origins of the site. And yes, a lovely kind of savoury expression of Pinot Noir. I think it's kind of stretching my memory at the moment a little bit, because I was just going to sit in the back seat and let Steve waffle on, which is most. I think it's like 40 or 50% whole bunch in this wine. And yeah, just to go, we really liked this parcel, so we bottled it by itself, and quite a unique site, quite a different expression of Pinot Noir compared to Central Otago, but lovely sinewy kind of tannins, and and that was probably about 3 weeks on skins, a year in barrel, no sorry, 18 months in barrel. And then you bottled kind of that September. All the wines are unfined, unfiltered.
Did they see new oak as well, or it is?
Yeah, that one, did about 30%, which would just look quite well with that whole bunch one. I think in general, like our North Canterbury Pinot is closer to 20%, and I think I'm tending towards lower for North Canterbury kind of going forward. I think it probably is an area that suits lower percentages, where Central Otago, I think with this riper sweet fruit, kind of likes a higher percentage of new oak. So it's about, I guess it's about choosing techniques that we best think kind of suits the site. Like I was saying before, a big believer in everything we do influences flavour. So it's about choosing the right tool out of the tool belt to get the best out of the site. With the farming, whether it's undervine cultivation or undervine mowing, or, shoot thinning, how much leaf plucking, it all depends from site to site. And then that's the same philosophy with the winemaking. It's just, they're all just tools in the tool belt, whether it's whole bunch or oak or time on skins. They're all just techniques that will give us different things, and it's about choosing the right technique for the site.
I'll just jump in here as well for those that love the numbers, because I've got the tasting notes in front of me, and Huw's having to use his memory after a full day of processing fruit and harvest today. So 30, it's a nice way, easy way to remember it is 33% whole bunch and 33% new oak. So same percentages for those two. So that was nice and easy. Thank you, Huw, from the marketing team.
I'm sure it's 100% correct. It's quite a just an interesting wine, and that's the 2020 is the only Korimako we've done so far. So that the idea with this Pastures Collection allows us now to, we always have the North Canterbury Pinot, but if there's a certain part that pops up that year, then we can put it under a single vineyard label for that wine.
So is this just because 2020 was a great vintage, and you thought it was really showing well that year, and you don't make it?
Yeah, 2020 was an amazing vintage, and in that little parcel, we really liked it, so we wanted to bottle it separately. we haven't done it in 21, 22 or 23 from that vineyard. That's just gone into the North Canterbury those years.
Right.
So-
I see.
With the springs, we did 2020 and a 22. Yeah, so it's very much, we'll only put it in a bottle if we think the quality is there to be a single vineyard wine. Otherwise, it'll go to the appellation level.
In New Zealand, what's the current vintage of the Korimako?
2020.
It is
Yeah.
still.
Yeah.
So there's not been a vintage yet that you in the 23, 24 looking positive?
Not for that vineyard. We haven't. No, unfortunately, not. We've had some smaller vintages in North Canterbury in 22 and or 21, 22 and 23 have been quite. It's all kind of weather affected in one way or another in terms of crop sizes. So yeah, no, we haven't got anything there, but we do. I guess the next one is a new single vineyard from our central property in Lowburn, which is the Manata site. So the Manata and Snake's Tongue from the same property, but Manata's, I guess, the single vineyard, Snake's Tongue is the single block wine. And this site, Steve and Brian purchased in 2018. It's the old Lowburn Ferry vineyard in Lowburn, so it's in between Cromwell and Wanaka, up the base of the Pisa Range. So up the Lowburn Valley Road, and then we have the Lowburn stream that runs through the property. And yeah, basically, Steve kind of decided, chose this property for a number of factors. Really, the soil is really rich and high organic matter, has a really long history of human cultivation. It was Chinese market garden during the gold rush, so has beautiful organic matter, and in a dry climate like Central Otago, when you only have 350 mil rain a year, having soils that hold water is really important. And then really being sheltered to the west with the Pisa Range right at the base, that really gives us a protection from the hot afternoon sun in Central Otago. So Central is an interesting region. It has the shortest growing season out of everyone, being so far south, but it has the longest day length during the peak of the growing season. So the peak of summer over Christmas and January, the sun doesn't go down till probably 11 o'clock at night. So that hot afternoon sun can really, if on those sites that are like Bendigo and Northburn, where it's kind of facing west and northwest, they can be really quite exposed. So we like the idea of this property not being too exposed to those extreme afternoon heats. And that higher organic matter really produces Pinot Noir with lovely silky kind of texture. And yeah, we think a really interesting expression of Central Otago Pinot with really those svelte kind of silky tannins, where a lot of the kind of schist-based soils that can often give you a bit more angular-based tannins. So that the soils are lake bed-derived soils that have been lifted up by earthquakes, versus the glacial schist soils, which a lot of other vineyards are on, where the Sugarloaf is just to the north of us, basically just across Swan Road. Then you hit the Sugarloaf, and that's where the glacier stopped. So the Sugarloaf, which is this like flat kind of tabletop kind of mountain, that's glacial soil, and then where we are is the lake bed derived soil, which there's a few good properties around Central that share that same soil type. On Bannockburn, I think Felton Road Block 3 is that kind of same soil, and same with Chinaman's Terrace. They've all been lifted up at the same time out of the lake bed.
What have you done anything different with extraction for these as opposed to
No, quite similar. There's less whole bunch in that wine, probably only 10% in the Manata. But in terms of extraction, I tend to not do too much. We kind of everything's handpicked, and then majority is destemmed, no sulfur on the fruit, and then we just wet the cap with a small amount of wine once a day. Just with a bigger tank, it could be like 2-minute pump over. With a small couve, it's just a jug over of like 20 litres. And then we just plunge during the peak of the ferment, just to release the heat out of the ferment, out of the cap. So it's only really plunge once or twice during the whole ferment, and it's back to wetting the cap once a day, just with just enough wine to make sure that the cap's wet and healthy. And yeah, about 3 to 4 weeks on skins. But yeah, I think that you can really see the silkiness in that wine compared to the more kind of sinewy, kind of rustic kind of structure of the North Canterbury wine. And I think that site and place that kind of has that. I think it's got the plushness of Central Otago, that fruit, but it's that site has this silkiness. And that was, speaking of Steve, that was something that really attracted him to that vineyard. Looking at the Lowburn Ferry wines, you always saw this kind of svelte, kind of silky kind of tannin from those wines, and even kind of those wines often made at a contract winemaking facility with commercial yeasts and everything. They still had this kind of silkiness. So that's what we think. It's a really great site. It's something that when Brian and Steve were buying Pyramid, they looked at the Waikari site, and it's an amazing site that makes truly unique wines. But one of the challenges we have here is climatically we're on the edge. It's not an easy place to farm. It's you can get a snowstorm with or blizzard once you've had 3 leaf out and get frosted, and it's so that having a complementary vineyard that allows us to have a bit more stability as a business, but also a great site that makes great Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. And that's what this Lowburn property really ticks. The Central Otago climate and weather patterns are quite different to North Canterbury. So in like a La Nina season where the East Coast can be colder and wetter, Central Otago is warm and dry. And El Nino, where we're having this year, and the East Coast is where we're like bone dry and warm, fruits looking amazing. Central Otago has a little bit more frosty, challenging, kind of more weather coming through. So they complement each other really well. And most importantly, that we think they're great sites for Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, just different expressions of the varieties.
Is there a plan to plant any Chardonnay at Manata?
We've done it. It's planted, and we've made a 23, which is still in barrel, which will just get racked shortly. And and we've picked the 24, and it's fermenting away. So it's just a smaller percentage on the Manata property. I think we've got 1.5 hectares out of 10 of Chardonnay at Manata, and Waikari with the new plantings, we're at 75% Chardonnay and 25% Pinot Noir. But a lot of the Chardonnay vines are still young and not cropping yet here. Getting probably another year or 2 before they're all cropping. But the original planting of Mike and Claudia was 75% Pinot Noir and 25% Chardonnay. But we think it's still a great site for Pinot Noir, but we think it's a very unique a site for Chardonnay. So we wanted to expand those Chardonnay plantings. And really we just planted. Mike had a planting map of Waikari. It's about 7. It was the original plantings of 2.2 hectares. And we've got 7 hectares planted now, and that was basically finished planting Mike's original planting map. And so we've planted more field of fire Chardonnay, which is a heavier clay soil. and a lion's tooth. Some more Chardonnay lion's tooth soil, which is a high limestone soil. So we really just followed that original, original kind of vision of Mike's.
We've got about 10 minutes to go, so might be good if we move on to the snake's tongue.
Perfect. Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, snake's tongue. This is a part of that Manata vineyard. It's the lowest terrace on the property. It's the youngest soil on the property as well. So they're all within that 10 hectares. There's different terraces, and kind of the home block is a kind of gentle kind of north-facing slope, and then you're down lower is this snake's tongue terrace, and that is a Abel clone planted there that was planted 2007, and we've been making this wine separately since 19, and then we saw a lot of potential in it, and then Nick, who's the viticulturalist and the estate manager, our national viticulturist and the Manata estate manager, has been kind of weaving his magic there. He with lots of different cover crops, multi-species cover crops. He's got some rows he hasn't mowed for like 3 years. And he really, from 2018 to 2021, he moved the organic matter from 3% to 6% in those soils through his farming techniques. And so with all of that and this better, higher water holding capacity of the soils, for every like 1% of organic matter, it holds another 100,000 litres of water per hectare in the soil, and it has more carbon sequestration in the soil and much more microbial life. All of those things basically made the vines happier and healthier, the fruit looked better, and 21. We saw a real leap in the quality of the fruit and therefore the wine, and we basically bottled single block wine from that site in 21, and then continued in 22, 23s will be bottled this year, and every year we've seen an increase in quality from that site. So we think it's a really unique, interesting part of the vineyard. Has a lovely kind of structure and complexity in that part of the vineyard, and it's a very different Pinot to earth smoke or angel flower, but I think it still has this kind of savoury kind of complexity, and but a lot more kind of fruit depth with Central Otago. So with that bigger sunshine, our winemaking, we use a bit of whole bunch in the fermentation and a bit of new oak, where the Waikari wines, the earth smoke and angel flower are 100% distilled and no new oak, because it's much more, I guess, a ethereal kind of site that's much more translucent, where the Central Otago has so much sunshine in the glass. We think that techniques like whole bunch and a little bit of new oak helps frame that fruit and sunshine, and gives them tension and structure. So that had basically a year in barrel, and then racked to wooden coups after the second harvest, and sat in those over the second winter and bottled in September, unfined, unfiltered. So quite similar winemaking to the Manata, just a little bit more whole bunch in it, but just it's a part of the vineyard that works quite well with that technique, I think.
How big is the part of the vineyard? How big is
The Abel's 0.7 of a hectare. We've got some young vines planted in 2018 there, which is maybe another 2 hectares. That's not going into this wine yet, but like in 10, 20 years time, it has the potential to go into this wine, because it is that same soil type. But at the moment it's just that older vine Abel, 0.7 of a hectare.
Sorry, I missed how much whole bunch was in this one.
25% in the 2021, and about 30% new oak.
I'm just going to jump in there again because once again you did the marketing team an amazing favour, Huw, and it was 25% and 25%.
Oh, 25.
That
yeah.
is 100% correct.
Yeah, no, that is. No, it was 25% actually. It was in 4 punches, and one of them was new. It's just there's been a few vintages since. But yeah, that's correct. That's and what do we do?
And then compared to Manata was 15% whole bunch and 25% new oak.
Yeah,
Thanks, Natalie.
thanks. Save the day.
Yeah, super lifted, very floral and yeah, just such a different animal to Manata, which is a bit
Yeah.
and heavier, I suppose.
Yeah, more yeah. I think there's a lovely kind of, I guess, floral perfume character to that block, and I think that's why I like the whole bunch on it too, because it kind of helps enhance that part of the vineyard. There's certainly other parts of Manata where I've tried whole bunch and it doesn't work. So it's very much about, I think it's a technique that works well with that part of the vineyard.
Delicious. Really lovely. Gonna have wine for breakfast.
Yeah.
This is the wine between it.
It's a strong start to the day. So does anyone have any more questions before we start to wrap things up?
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Cool.